Salutations everybody, it is Matty here today, sitting down to talk with you about the First Descendant. Now, many of you already know my taste in video games. I love me occasionally a good looter shooter, a good online experience, but for the most part, I stay to my single player games. I just enjoy those and replay those when I'm looking for more hours in my games. But ladies and gentlemen, the First Descendant I saw was trending on YouTube. I saw a lot of streamers talking about it and playing, and frankly, from the trailers I saw leading into the launch of the game, I was surprised by this. I really thought that this was not going to be one that caught on, especially when one of the first trailers that hit closing in on the game's launch had zero gameplay. Pretty big red flag, but nonetheless, you go ahead and you look at the game now, 40,000 plus reviews on Steam. A lot of people are talking about it online. I guess it's July, so things are pretty dry right now, so it's the new thing to be talking about. So I decided, you know what? Let's keep an open mind. Let's fire this thing up. Let's see what this game is all about. And so I got some thoughts, and I'm going to keep it real with you all. Not all of them are, well, in fact, most of them are not positive. But let's start off at the bare level here. What is the story? Who's making this? Well, this is from Nexon Games, and the story goes as follows. You fire things up, there's a cutscene that describes how humans were overran by this race called the Vulgus. They're an alien race. They wipe out the human race, but then the Colossi come in. Seemingly, they kill both of these races, take them over entirely. So now humans are on the brink of extinction and can use their ancestors' powers to fight back. Basically, these are where all of your little magic powers come from. Then there's Carol, the leader of the Vulgus, and he's the big bad threat for at least this part of the story at the game's launch. Now, things open up with you seeking this object called the Ironheart, which will serve as a point of hope for humans. Carol naturally will get his hands on it, and now you're going to have to scratch and claw your way back through a billion missions to get that back to give humanity a chance to survive. And there is also this figure called the Guide, who is a being that can only be seen by descendants, and they are debating whether or not humans should trust in the Guide to find a way to survive. You may have already noticed a lot of terminology spaghetti in this one. I mean, they'll hit you with things like the Ironhearts, the ruins, the this, the that. You're like, what are you all talking about? They hit you pretty heavy-handedly with some terminology. You combine that with some subpar voice acting. Not the greatest introduction to the story, but I don't think it's what everyone's going to be here for, especially when you look at the gameplay. It's probably the flow, the movement, if you're in the mood for a looter shooter, that sort of thing. But still, I think setting up these universe is really important because it defines so much. It defines the weapons you use, which are pretty simple, like you've seen before. Your SMGs, assault rifles, hand cannons, snipers, shotguns. It's all of that same weaponry, so there's nothing really unique on that level with this universe. It also determines the environments, which it's been really interesting to see some people's responses to the environments, because I've seen some people saying like things such as, oh, well, it's Unreal Engine 5. I knew that the second I saw it. I don't know who I'm talking to with this, but game developers, no one should be able to look at your game and immediately tell you what it's being built with. I mean, you look at Octopath Traveler, I don't look at that and think, oh, that's an Unreal Engine game. And can you blame people for saying stuff like this? I feel the artistic inspiration is fading a little bit when it comes to visual design in our industry. I think even if you enjoy a game like The First Descendant, that's totally okay. I just want to say that I think this game very much looks at everything surrounding it and borrows a million and one ideas. It doesn't have a single original one of its own. And in particular, that's a problem in gaming when it comes to visual stuff. Like, how many games have imitated Fortnite? This game borrows a lot from games like Destiny 2, such as the UI and UX experience. I mean, see it for yourself. How the interactions happen in dialogue, they're very similar to Destiny. The grapple hook and movement is extremely similar to Warframe. Heck, speaking of Destiny earlier, they borrowed the whole tower idea from Destiny, as that functions as their own little hub area. I mean, you see some of the environments in this game, the metallic shine on basic ancient sci-fi tropes mixed with mountainous terrain, and that can only be done so many times. Like, we saw that, for example, with Anthem. Or what about the tinted skybox set upon floating metallic platforms surrounded by vast stretches of nothing? Like, seriously, I don't know how else to define this other than I was playing this game. My fiance came in and she's like, what are you playing? I feel like I've seen this before. And I'm like, exactly. Like, I feel like I've seen this game a million times. So yeah, the visual distinction clearly isn't there, but I know that that's not what a lot of people are here for. I know that was supposed to be my whole positive part of the video, but I got on a little bit of a tangent there. But I feel like this is a good example for me to have that conversation about how visual design is fading a little bit in our industry in exchange for just doing what someone else did. And I think that hurts a lot of these games because I don't see a lot of creativity in the First Descendant. Okay, now I did say I was going to try to be more positive, so let's focus on that a little bit. I think the new player experience is smooth and simple. This goes a long way with me. After playing a little bit of Destiny 2 for about 10 hours last year, I learned very quickly that there are games that do onboarding and new player stuff really well. Maybe that's changed with Destiny since the last 2 expansions have come out when I last tried it, but that is my example. That is my experience where I went, oh my, like this is not, in my opinion, very beginner friendly unless I had a Destiny vet walking me through this entire experience. Something like First Descendant I really appreciate. I got right into the thick of things. It doesn't really waste any of your time at all unless you're just not enjoying what's there in front of you, but they don't hesitate to throw you into the action, throw you into open zone things. They don't really even bombard you with tutorials. They just let you play, and that is one of my favorite things about the game. They just throw you into the thick of things. Now, while things are familiar in this game, like the grapple hooks I talked about, this is one of the better parts of the title, so you can throw this out twice in a row. You can get some really good movement going in. It also has a little bit of physics attached to it, so let's say you grapple hook against the corner of a building and you go flying, it'll propel you past it. There is some decent movement there. I still think something like Warframe absolutely has the edge. And I know some people will immediately go, like, well, Matty, that game's been around for like over a decade, and I get all that, but I'm not even talking about content. I'm just talking about like general polish and feel and gameplay for this game. I feel like the things it's taken inspiration from, they've just already been lapped by the games that existed before them. So yeah, the movement's there. It's definitely better than other shared online shooters I've experienced, but I would define it as I would define a lot of other parts of this game, which is acceptable, but not really even good or great. There are lots of classes here, and I actually think this is one of the bright spots of the game. The starter ones aren't really going to light your fire, so when you fire this game up, you're going to have a selection of 3 different starter classes. One's more mage-like, one's more grenade-focused, and the other is more tank-like. And frankly, these all look very bare bones and simple. But when you look at a class like Bunny, who has a lot more momentum and movement and really gets her damage done by accelerating around the map, that's where things can really diversify some more. I would have thrown her more in that immediate beginner pool. She's easy to unlock, but I would throw her in that immediate beginner pool personally because I think she is one of the more distinct feeling classes in the game. And there are plenty beyond that I was researching. You have to get certain parts and programs to be able to unlock these characters. You can also pay for them if you'd like to. There are a lot of microtransactions here. There's skins you can pay for. There's a battle pass that you can pay for. There are these heroes you can pay for, and a lot of them are very high priced, and it will likely incentivize you to do the exact opposite of what this game clearly wants you to do and not spend your money because the prices can go pretty high. Now, I know some people are going to immediately fire off with, oh, well, Matty, it's free to play. Come on, bro. They got to make their bread somehow. And I totally get and respect that. I just think there's a right and wrong way of doing it. And when I see like, hey, there's 8 different color palettes attached to your character from head to toe, including their gun skin, that are all individually monetized versus like a single skin being sold, that's where it gets a little out of hand. I think the prices for Descendants, if you want to pay for them, it's 600 of whatever this currency is called. To get past the 600 mark for this particular Descendant, you got to spend $20 to get 1,000 caliber. So it's ridiculous. It's out of hand, and I think it's another reason why this game is not going to go anywhere fast. I also like the general game flow. Like the game flow here, if this was in a different, more exciting shared world online product, I think I'd be really about what is here. So there's a really good flow of what's called these battlefield missions. So you'll get transported to these distinct zones throughout this overall map. Again, very similar to Destiny or Warframe games you've seen before. And I think the thing that First Descendant does that can loop a lot of people in is when it gets you into that flow, it doesn't really let you go. The loading screens are there, but they're certainly brief. But when it comes to actually starting the missions up, like you'll just go up to a beacon, hold A to start. It'll give you a timer of how long they think it'll take. Usually it's around the 2 to 5 minute range, most times finishing beneath that. And what's really cool is you don't even wait to queue up. You just join in these zones. If you're running by, you can help someone out in the middle of their mission by just starting to fight. The UI updates immediately. And I think that type of stuff is really good because it incentivizes co-op play. It incentivizes online play. And you get that experience without really needing to have a big group of friends hopping into the First Descendant. So yeah, getting that flow going where I can just hop into these missions, don't have to wait for anyone. Only time it works against it, and I think this is sort of the double-edged sword that this system provides, which I'm okay accepting, is that there will be moments where you'll jump into a mission that someone's already in the middle of doing, and they'll be nearing completion. And there was one time where literally I jumped in, I shot one enemy, and the mission, which was supposed to take like 5 minutes, was already over in less than 20 seconds. There are times that'll happen, and I think in these shooty looty games, you're not going to really complain too much about that because you're like, okay, cool, free loot roll. You can replay these missions if you'd like to grind some items out. A lot of these games with their unlocks are based around challenges like beat this boss, but some of them are based around collecting items, and so you can rerun these missions, and being able to go through them kind of quickly is a pretty nice thing for those who want to get into that loot grind. Completing missions and killing enemies are going to grant you weapons like I talked about earlier, from pistols, assault rifles, and SMGs to shotguns, snipers, and hand cannons. You can place modules within them to deal extra damage. So at one point, I put some fire damage on my SMG. You can do things like rifle accuracy to increase your accuracy, just little modifications to your weapon. You can also equip on your character like a new reactor, new additional components to them to basically increase your stats and little passive bonuses surrounding your character to overall tailor your build some more. I mentioned a suite of powers through the ancestors that you have. The one that I started things off with was Viessa. She uses a sort of freeze style of power, so I can throw out a frozen shard at enemies. I can kind of hit the ground with what's called a cold snap, I believe, and kind of lift it up a little bit and hit them with a frost attack that way. I can run around with the froster on my feet and do damage while kind of running and gunning, which I think was actually a pretty underrated ability. I can throw out like a little mini tornado. There's a couple of cool powers there that you can also augment, but I would say that my biggest complaint with the powers is there is like next to no impact for them on a VFX level and on a sound level. I think the guns sound pretty good here, and I know when I talk sound, some people think like it's very nitpicky, but I promise you, you'll know it right when you feel it and you play it. When there is no real visual feedback for big powers that are attached to your character in some instances, this doesn't apply to every single character in every single class, but at least some of the opening ones, it feels a little disappointing. It feels a little flat, and it ultimately makes you feel weak in a game that's designed to be built around locomotion and feeling strong. You can hear my dog in the background. Clearly, he's not pleased about it. So yeah, I just didn't think the powers had the impact that they needed, and what I found myself feeling is this is just a super middle-of-the-road game. It doesn't really do anything terribly wrong. If you've noticed, what I described here is a lot of things that are just surface level acceptable. But for me, my tolerance of that is pretty low. Why is that? Because we have so many games to play. You have things like Game Pass, Humble Bundle, Steam Sale is wrapping up right now. Games are the cheapest they've been. They're in a complete surplus. There's so many great games coming out constantly that our backlogs are loading up at a staggering rate. Something like the First Descendant screams to me, flavor of the week, player base gone within a month. Maybe I'm wrong about that. I'd love to be wrong about that. I'm not preying on a company's downfall. I'm just calling it how I see it, which is our time is valuable, and I can't spend it on something that can't even bother to be a little more creative with its environmental assets, with its gameplay systems and flow. It just wants to copy enough where it can be acceptable enough to hope that you'll pay for the in-game store and fuel future seasons. So, didn't really light my fire. I wasn't expecting to walk out of this loving it, just because personally I know my taste in games and these aren't always going to be my favorite, but I feel like I'm good enough at doing my job to be able to distinguish between, oh, this isn't for me and this just isn't that great. And I would say this falls into the latter category compared to a lot of the competition out there in its space, but generally speaking, just the quality of games. Now, I have seen a lot of people enjoy this game. I was looking at some of the Steam reviews. Some recent ones were positive. Overall, the current rating right now is mixed. So maybe you found this video and you're like, what is this guy talking about? But for me personally, this was an easy uninstall and remove from my account over on Steam. So maybe you feel differently. I'd love to hear some different, more positive thoughts on the First Descendant if you have them. I don't want to come in here like Mr. Party Pooper, but yeah, didn't light my fire really at all. Looking forward to hearing your thoughts down below, so fire away. Other than that, take excellent care of yourselves, and I will see you in the next video. Stay sexy, stay active. I love you all. Peace.